Welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio, where we bring you conversations with the top business minds on Long Island and around the nation every week. Featuring expert consultants and small business owners who have found success but are also willing to share their top tips, failures, and give gritty, matter-of-fact advice based on their firsthand experience. Now, let's get down to business on Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hello, and welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation. My name is Ray Schwetz, AVP of Business Banking at Jovia Financial Credit Union, along with Donyshia Boston-Hill, CEO, keeper of the brand, marketing, and digital agency.
We're focused on being the premier resource for business and entrepreneurship. We bring you weekly business advice, tips, tools, and services that help you grow your business. Plus, we interview top leaders in the industry.
And today is a big treat because helping provide us with business empowerment today is Joan McShane. She's with the USTA, the United States Tennis Association, Officiating Growth Manager, Eastern New England Region. Welcome to the show today, Joan.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we're very excited to have you here. I have a lot of friends, a lot of business contacts that are very much interested in tennis and in the Open, so they're going to be very excited to hear about this. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself, though, to start?
Okay, so I actually grew up in the Queens, Long Island border area, probably less than 10 miles from the U.S. Open, but I had zero interest in tennis and never played it growing up, had nothing to do with it, never went to the Open. It wasn't until after I graduated college, met my husband, and moved to Connecticut that he bought me a tennis racket for my birthday in my late 20s and thought it would be something fun for us to do together, and quickly realized that he wouldn't be the one to give me tennis lessons because that would end in a divorce. So he advised me to take some tennis lessons at the local club, which I did, quickly fell in love with the people there, made some great friends. Ended up joining a team, I think my first team sport, as I was in my 30s. From there, I met wonderful, wonderful ladies, and it just progressed from being on a team to being a team captain. And along the way, just an email came from USTA saying that they needed officials. And I remember talking to my husband saying, if this is a way for me to pay for my tennis with tennis, how great would that be? And the kids were in school. It was something I could do on the weekends. I could choose my own availability and I could work it around the kids' schedules. And it just seemed like a no-brainer to me. And so I went through the training, which at the time was in person with a test and some on-court shadowing. And then I was quickly on my way. And within a couple of months, I was officiating junior matches. And then I was officiating college matches. And I did that for a number of years, just because of my schedule and the family schedule. But there was enough opportunities in New England that gave me a taste of the professional side. There is the famous ATP event in Newport in the summer, which is the men's grass court event. It's the only ATP grass court event in the country, as well as the New Haven Open, which was a women's WTA event. And through a series of being right place, right time, right need, I was selected for both of those, and I got started on my line officiating career. And then once the kids got a little older and I could start branching out and applying to other professional events, my scores at the line events were good enough to get me into some of the bigger events. And from there, I jumped to Miami, DC, Western and Southern in Cincinnati, and then, of course, the big ones, Indian Wells and the U.S. Open. And I will say it along the way, I always stayed at the community level, and I always worked junior events, and I became a volunteer section chair in New England as well, so that I was responsible for helping to train and recruit officials within my New England region.
Now, that's awesome. Now, Ray, you guys have a lot of great people that came out of Nassau Community College, yourself, Eddie Murphy, and Joan as well.
I did 1 year of college, but wasn't sure that it was the right fit for me. So after talking with my parents, I took a little time off, maybe about a year, started working full time, and then went back to school at night because I was determined to get my degree. And I went back to Nassau at night, and it was the perfect environment for me. I really enjoyed the classes. I enjoyed the campus. I can remember some of the professors and some of the classes that I took. And And I was able to graduate going back at night.
Yeah, that's awesome. Always glad to have a fellow alum on the show. So thanks for that. Now, I'm just curious what's involved with officiating. I myself am a bit of a novice when it comes to professional tennis playing. And so what is officiating like? What do you actually do?
That's a great question. A lot of people just see what they see on TV. They either see the person up in the chair overseeing these high-level, high-pressure matches, or they see line officials on the lines at the big events. But for the most part, it's the community-level official that we need the most and that gets utilized the most. A community-based official is what we call a rover. A rover is someone that is responsible for multiple courts, maybe 4 or 6 courts, depending on the size of the tournament. And they do just that. They rove from court to court, standing at the net post, observing the play, making sure that fair play, timely movement of the matches goes along, and then helps with any incidents or problems that might come up. It might be a scoring dispute. Somebody might need a medical timeout, and that needs to be overseen if there's a trainer or not a trainer. Oversee the timing if they need to go to the bathroom and on the set breaks. And of course, the most important one, making sure that fair play and the right calls are being made. So being able to see the ball and track the ball is definitely part of it.
That's got to be a challenge.
There is, right, yeah. And from there is also chair umpiring, which we do more at the college level, where you actually do sit in the chair for the team events. And the format is a little different. The scoring is a little different, but it's a very exciting atmosphere. You have the teams cheering, and you have the coaches can be on court. They're allowed to coach as opposed to junior events. And it's a very different but exciting atmosphere. And you work with a lot of other officials when you do that. So that makes it a lot of fun.
Now, Joan, we've seen a lot about tennis growth over the last 2 years. How has that affected you?
Oh my gosh. I think COVID had a lot of downsides, but one of the upsides was that it created a boom for the tennis industry. It was one of the few sports that you could safely play at a safe distance. So the participation level has been absolutely booming in the last few years. More people have come to USTA. More people are playing in the parks. And as a result, it's pretty obvious we need more officials to work all of these events and all these tournaments that now have really just exploded at the community level.
And is that where the growth comes in? Because I was going to ask you, your title is Officiating Growth Manager. So is that
Correct.
where? Oh, okay.
That is it exactly. Up until recently, any of the recruitment that USTA tried to do, they did from a national standpoint. They created this position, an officiating growth manager, to work specifically within the different sections of USTA around the country to really be the boots on the ground person to help drive that recruitment. So I was very lucky to be, again, right place, right time, was working actively within my New England section to help recruit as already. So it was a natural progression for me to try and apply for this position. And I was very pleased when I got it. And it brought me back to the Eastern section, like I said, where I grew up. So very familiar with the areas, Alley Pond Park, Cunningham Park, Eisenhower Park, all those parks, and where all the USTA events are being held. So I really helped to work with each section of USTA and find areas where we can recruit and train new officials.
And now, Joan, for those listening that may not be familiar with the sections themselves, you mentioned some amazing partners in some of the parks that we work with. Can you also mention just like the area of Eastern and New England so that the listener can be more familiar?
Of course, yes. So I live in Connecticut, which is part of the New England section. New England encompasses Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. The eastern section, while just as large, is pretty much the entire state of New York, as well as Long Island and the upper part of New Jersey.
You are listening to Tara Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ray Schwetz, along with Donyshia Boston-Hill, and our guest today is Joan McShane with the USTA, the United States Tennis Association, Officiating Growth Manager, Eastern New England Region. Now, what's the path exactly? You kind of alluded to it earlier, but what's the path to becoming an officiator, and why would you recommend someone pursue that path?
For me, it was the flexibility. We have a number of jobs over the years that require us to be in a certain place at a certain time for a certain amount of hours each week. The beauty of being an official is you set your own schedule. You work for yourself. You can decide how often you're available and what you want to do. Once you get into it, you kind of get the feel of the tennis season for, say, college is spring. The professional season is more the summer. And then the USTA junior goes all, and adult goes all throughout the year. So you start to learn the season of what's out there and what you can make yourself available for. And the path to getting trained to be an official could not be any easier. Right now, there's only 3 requirements that you have to maintain at all times, which is be a USTA member, makes sense, submit to a vision form and have 20/20 vision, either corrected or uncorrected, which we submit a form every other year. And the last is completing a background check and going through what we call safe play. We want to ensure that both the officials and the players are always in a safe environment. Beyond that, all the training is done online, free, with our online modules. There's the rules and regulations. There's 3 of those modules. There's roving 1 and 2 modules, and the introduction to officiating. Each module takes about 45 minutes, and it can be done in your own time frame. There is no hard start or stop. We have people that, especially after the U.S. Open, very excited. They sign up and they blow through the modules in a matter of weeks. And then some start and then life gets in the way, life takes over, and they circle back to it a couple of months later. The beauty of my position is that now there is somebody there specifically to help them answer questions, nudge them along the way and be that contact person that they might need if they have any specific questions along the way.
Yeah, flexibility is fantastic. And I think it reminds me a lot of, if you have like a teaching position where you have the summers off, you can kind of control your income, right?
That is exactly. We have a lot of teachers that do that. The amount of people that I met along the way, especially once I got to the pro level, I met officials from around the world, all around the country. We know each other, we're like a family because when you do work these big events, you travel together. Up until recently, you might have shared a hotel room together. We travel to the venue together. We eat together. We work on court together. So it really becomes a tight-knit family. And I have met flight attendants, judges, retired military. It really runs the gamut of the wide variety of backgrounds and ethnicities that everybody brings to the officiating world.
And now, Joan, when people contact you, you're covering the New England and Eastern section. But if I become an official, can I become an official and go into other states? It sounds like you're doing a lot of traveling. Is that a possibility for someone?
Absolutely. So when you become an official, your certification is it applies to any event in the United States. So if, say, someone is in college and they become an official and they go to school in New York during the school year, but then they go back to, say, Virginia, they can work Virginia. Once you're certified, you can work anywhere within the United States, and each section does a great job with making sure the officials know what's available to them when they're in that section to work. And then, of course, like I said, the opportunity to apply to bigger events is there. So while the community pathway is what I'm responsible for recruiting for, the professional pathway, if someone is really interested and shows that spark, USTA National does have a professional pathway available to those officials that might want to try that track.
Now, what kind of skills do you feel like you employ in your job as an officiator? I mean, you mentioned the vision is important. You got to see where the ball goes, and sometimes it's pretty fast. But what sort of skills do you employ, and how does that maybe apply to, like you mentioned, maybe there's a teacher who during the summer they do this, or how does that work? What kind of skills do you employ, and how does that kind of transfer to other possible positions?
So I would would say a lot of the skills that we use as an official can be applied from any full-time position that you would normally have. There is certainly the getting along with your colleagues. Being able to problem solve on court is a big one. If you are roving an event and you're responsible for multiple courts, you might have a scoring dispute on one court, a bathroom break on another, somebody who needs a trainer on a third, and then someone who's questioning line calls. So being able to quickly problem solve, knowing the rules, being able to use them effectively, and then dispense them fairly and calmly is very important. Communication is another one. I believe one of the best things officials do is be able to listen and then be able to communicate effectively back to the player or the coach or to a parent what's happening on the court. It's great to be able to interact with them and know that you are ensuring fair play and that the match is being conducted in the most fair way possible. And with that comes a fair bit of confidence. Knowing the rules is what gives you that confidence. And the players know. They know when you know your stuff and when maybe you're questioning it. And that's okay. I carry my rule book with me all the time. And I would be a liar if I said I didn't go back and refer to it many times, especially in the beginning on my breaks every night before an event. Reread those rules because you can never read them enough, in my opinion. And that's what gives you the confidence to be able to really handle those skills that you need on court.
Yeah, I think I should perhaps look into this because I think it might help me as a parent. I have 3 kids, 3 girls.
So do I.
And I'm totally outnumbered, and I just feel like all day I'm negotiating. I feel like it's almost like I'm an attorney. It sounds like an officiator, those skills would transfer very well into parenting.
Yes, I can tell you that sometimes I bring out what I call my mom voice when maybe, kids are questioning a call and I made my ruling and I'm like, okay, I've made my ruling. It's time to move on. Back to play.
And now, can anyone become an official?
Yes, they can. There is some misconception about age or location. As long as you are legally able to work in the state that you live in, you can be an official. There is an official on USTA right now. He started when he was 16 years old, just part-time at his local club. He went from lessons to being an official. And he is now a professional chair umpire and has worked at all 4 Grand Slams, including the Olympics. It's the only job he had. So I say, if you're interested, there's nothing to stop you from giving it a try.
That's so cool. Now, you mentioned several different scenarios where an officiator is kind of looking at things like bathroom breaks and calls. And so what is, and going from court to court like that, I imagine there's been some times where, and you don't have to go into exact specifics and players and all that, but I'd love to hear a story about how, there was one day that was particularly challenging where you're going from like just one thing to the next and how you handled that. Oh,
yes. I mean, it's sayings are out there for a reason, and they say you learn more from your mistakes than from your successes. Successes, yes, great. I made a great line call. My call was upheld by Hawkeye. That's a thrill. That's always a thrill. But learning from my mistakes is probably the life lessons that I take with me. And I can tell you very early on in my career, I was working a very big junior event, and there was some discrepancy about 2 players returning back from the bathroom. And they both returned late outside of the time that they were allowed. And I wasn't sure what to do. So I remember saying, okay, since I don't know what to do and I don't want to mess this up, I'm not going to do anything in the moment. But after my day was done, I went to my referee, who oversees all of the officials at the large events, and is another position that officials can have. And we went over it. We went over the rules. And he said, in this case, because they both came back late, the rule is there is no penalty because there's no one over the other. And the very next day, the same scenario happened. And because I had reviewed that rule specifically the day before, I was able to apply it correctly the next day. And the referee said to me afterwards that he was impressed that I paid such close attention to the rule. And within one day, I was able to apply it correctly the next day. So that was something that stuck out because it was a big event, a lot of players, a lot of parents, and it was learning on the fly.
I think they were testing. They were testing you, Joan.
Oh, they definitely test you. They definitely test you. Parents love to, some of them think they know the rules. They like to tell you they know the rules. And we always nod and we listen to what they say. And then we maybe have to give a gentle correction. Or in one case where one father insisted he knew the rule about a bathroom break on my break, I went and photocopied the actual rule and left it at the tournament desk for him to read himself.
Yeah, I can imagine what that must be like because, just from seeing the kids' soccer games and things, people get so into it sometimes. And, when you're a parent, it's very hard to just look at it objectively. You get passionate about, sports teams that you're not related to, and this is your kid doing this. It's got to be, you got to maintain a fine line.
And that's why you can't go to the certain competitions.
Yeah, I'm not allowed.
I know. I mean, it's so hard, especially for parents of the younger kids that are just getting started and they mess up on the score all the time. They're sitting there on the side and they're just gritting their teeth because they want to tell them what the score is. And I have to gently remind them, it's not your match. It's your child's match. Let them work it out. Even though I know you could fix this in 2 seconds, it's their match. And so that education when they're young goes a long way for when they play when they're older.
You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio. Our guest today is Joan McShane, USTA, United States Tennis Association, Officiating Growth Manager for Eastern and the New England region. My name is Donyshia Boston-Hill, along with Ray Schwetz on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
What would you feel is the biggest misconception about what you do?
I think the biggest misconception they have about officiating is that it is only what you see on TV. Mm-hmm. They only see these chair umpires. They only see line umpires, and they don't realize the extent of community and college tennis that requires officials throughout the country and really around the world. And only those that actually play it or have their kids involved in it know what officials do as rovers or referees or chair umpires. So at the community level, I think is the unadvertised portion of officiating with tennis.
And so, Joan, you work with the chair umpires, the rovers, but you also work with the ball crews. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I'll tell you, working with the ball kids is always so much fun. From working, say, a pro circuit event, which would be the equivalent of baseball's AAA. So, you're playing at maybe big clubs versus actual stadiums. You may have kids that just play there, have never been a ball kid. They might play the game, but when it comes to being a ball person, they don't understand where they're supposed to be. They don't understand which side the ball goes on. So there's a lot of help at the lower levels. We try to work with them, and they're always so grateful. And then to see the professionalism at the larger events, at your Miamis, your Indian Wells, and certainly the U.S. Open and those events, these are bright kids. And when I say kids, I should really correct myself because it is a ball person. The U.S. Open does not have an age limit on it. And in fact, I just certified a woman in Massachusetts who wanted to become an official after being a ball person in her middle age, we'll say, at the U.S. Open this past year. She was thrilled to find out that there was no age limit, and she tried out athletic. She was able to do it. She loved it, and now has become an official because of it.
What do you feel is the most important thing, and this is more of a Donyshia kind of a thing, because Donyshia is the branding expert, for sure. With your own personal brand, I'm sure when you're out there, you represent yourself a certain way. What are the most important qualities that you feel like you have to have for your personal brand out there? Absolutely.
As an official, my reputation is probably the most important brand that I have. I put on my USTA uniform or my ITA uniform or whatever uniform is required of me at whatever event that I am working, and I represent that event. I, as well as my fellow officials, are very much aware and treat it with the professionalism and respect that it deserves. We always know that we can be observed at any time, and we should act accordingly. There is an officials code of conduct that we all adhere to. And we know that when we work a certain number of events over and over again, certain areas, the players get to know us, the parents get to know us, the coaches get to know us. And when they see that you work consistently and try to be as fair as possible and make your calls as good as you possibly can, then the pressure comes down. You see the shoulders go from up here, high up in the neck, to down and relaxed. Oh, this woman official's on my court. I had her a month ago. I know she makes good calls. And the other part to remember is not getting overly arrogant. You're only as good as your last call. I can have a line call at a pro match where I call a ball out within a half an inch. It's upheld by Hawkeye. I walk off court feeling great. And then the very next rotation, I can go out on another court and I can blow an easy one. It changes. And you're only as good as your last call. So you have to bring that dedication and that focus every time you go on court. And I think that's the biggest difference from community to professionalism. If you're on a professional match and you're calling a line, that focus and that dedication to that line is so high because the results and the outcome is so high. But the professionalism and the focus still applies at the community level, and whether you're in a chair or roving a junior event, because those kids depend on you just as much as those pros do.
Now, Joan, any parting thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners?
I would say officiating is like driving a car. You only get better by doing it. And it's one of those things that you don't know how much you're going to love it until you try it. And that's the beauty of being an official. I have some officials that they stay certified year after year because there's one local club tournament that they really like to be part of. And they stay certified just to work that. And then there's others who get started, just because they want to earn some extra money. And it takes off into a career that they never anticipated. I am a direct result of that. If you had told me when my husband bought me a tennis racket in my mid-20s that I would end up being employed by USTA representing the recruiting of officials, I would have said you was crazy.
And so, Joan, what's the best way to contact you, and how can someone start their officiating journey?
Great question. So you can visit USTA.com/start officiating. And from there, it brings you into our officiating webpage. You can also reach out directly to me at my email, joan.mcshane@usta.com.
Thanks so much for being on the show today. We really appreciate you being on the show, and Joan.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
I'd like to leave you with DB's philosophy. Don't let anyone work harder than you do. Serena Williams.
We want to thank you for being with us. My name is Ray Schwetz, along with Donyshia Boston-Hill, your co-host and producers. Visit nccradio.org for more information. We're available on Odyssey, TuneIn, iHeartRadio as a podcast on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This has been Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.